I had so much I wanted to say in the book. My fear was that it would become very repetitive and unstructured. So the commissioning editor, Sarah, who was amazing, asked me to write a pretty detailed synopsis. And I hate doing things like that. I'm one of those people that goes, it will go where it goes, it will happen when it happens. Stuff will come, it'll get downloads, it'll get on the page. She was like, okay, yeah, but like, no, no.
Welcome to Wild Muse, a healing artistic space for creative souls. And today I'm chatting with Lucy Cavendish, who is a therapist. She's host of the award-winning podcast Later Data, and her book, How to Have Extraordinary Relationships with Absolutely Everybody, has just been published. So I've been really enjoying diving into that. So we're going to be chatting about the writing process for the book. We're going to be talking about the juicy content. Really been looking forward to this conversation. Lucy, hi. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for asking me. It's a complete treat and a pleasure to be here. Thank you. It's so lovely to be here. Really lovely.
Oh, you sweet thing. Lucy, I would love to start with the genesis of the book. I know that we've got many writers in my audience who might be thinking about writing a self-help book because of their work or because of things that have been happening in their life. And so how did your work as a therapist inform the content of this book?
Yes, I mean, that's a very interesting question. So I've been a journalist for a very long time. So I've got a history in writing. So I know how to write, and I've written all my life. So I know how to do the process of writing. I'm going to say something very boring that everybody knows. People often say to me, oh, I want to do what you do. How did you do it? And if you want to write, you've got to sit down and write. That sounds very boring and dull, but the first thing you've got to do is sit down and write, and that's quite difficult. So that for me is relatively easy because I'm used to writing. About 10 years ago, I decided to retrain as a therapist, mainly because I was beginning to feel very uncomfortable about the media world I was in. And more importantly, I felt very uncomfortable about myself. I was beginning to really dislike myself and what I was writing, because I was writing about my family. And that's okay, but at some level, it's not okay. People's trust was beginning to go, and I felt I was invading people's lives. I was invading my own life. And then one day an article came out. I wrote it about my daughter, who's now 17, and she was tiny, and I had her after 3 boys. And I wrote an article saying, gosh, I can't believe I so wanted a girl, and I just ended up with a kind of mini boy. And I think the headline was something like, why I hate having my daughter, or something like that. And I actually sort of threw up. I felt so awful because that's going to be there forever. Luckily, we're close, obviously, and we love each other. And so we can talk about it. But that isn't really the point. And I thought, I don't want to be in this world anymore. I don't want to do it. It's so uncomfortable. And the thing about being a journalist, I think, is I was interviewing celebrities, and I have a massive curiosity about people. I'm quite nosy, I think. And what I hadn't realized is lots of people aren't very curious about people. So I meet people and talk to me like, tell me about, oh my goodness, that's interesting. And I realize that lots of people don't. They just go, okay, and they carry on. And if you're playing a very good counselor because you're genuinely interested in why people do what they do. And then you don't have to write about them. You don't have to go and sell them to the newspaper. You're just in the room with them. And I started retraining, and it opened up a whole new world to me, because anyone who's a therapist of any form, or anyone that's a citizen of the world, will know it's endless and it's wonderful. You can continually train and read and learn. And it was like, wow, this is fascinating. And that's how I started being a therapist. And then because I'm sort of one of those people that doesn't do anything by halves, so if I say I'm going to do something, I really do it. It's like if I'm going to Barcelona, I want to know everything about Barcelona, the history of it, who lived there. So I started doing lots of trainings and reading lots of books and doing trainings of, embodied training and then couples training, because I'm very interested in couples and I work a lot with couples. It's become a real area. And then I did Imago training, which is a wonderful couple system. Then I started doing coaching with Americans. Met Catherine Woodward Thomas, who does Calling in the One, and Conscious Uncoupling, which people have heard of. I trained with her. And then I was writing about it and then one day I thought, I'd like to get all this into a book. And I went to Podrell Press and they said, yes, in a book about relationships. They didn't want one about parenting because I think they felt that was a very, that's a book by itself, which I think is true.
Yeah.
It's true. So the book really is about our relationships with ourselves and others. So, our work colleagues, our family, our parents, our friends, and ultimately really our universe. But I had to dial that down a bit. You see, I think everyone's interested in that, but they thought I'd gone a bit off piste.
When you say they, you mean Quadrille?
Yeah. I mean, by
Evan,
I've really gone into, more, and I would like to go much more into what I would call the spiritual realm. I went bang on about that, but I do think there's something in the seeing ourselves as bigger and wider than this little tiny human, and I think that's actually helpful and reassuring to think of ourselves as bigger and more connected with something bigger than ourselves. But they sort of a bit mad.
Actually, that's interesting because I think, again, it gives people watching a sense that, okay, you can submit your proposal and you can have your ideas, but there's always going to be a back and forth. There's always going to be a sense of the publisher saying, this is great, but we need to tone this down. I also want to go back, Lucy, because you were saying, okay, your experience as a journalist really gave you that writing practice, that writing discipline. And then you had your experience as a therapist, which was really sort of itching that scratch that you already had, which was your interest in people. Because I think one of the things about your book that strikes me is there right from the start, because Catherine actually writes the foreword to your book, and she says something like, if you're reading this book, it's probably because you've got an issue with your relationship. I can't quite remember the line, just skipping forward to it now. Yeah, you've most likely picked up this book because you have some relationship issues you'd like to work through. And I think what really strikes me about this book is what a difference it makes when you really understand your audience. And obviously, because of your therapy work, you knew the things that people were struggling with. So I'm curious as to how that made the writing process easier. And maybe there might have been some challenges that I'm not even able to think about.
Well, I could sort of, the thing for me that's difficult, and I'm sure it is for other people, is structure. If you give me an open mic, you give me an open page as well, I could just sort of go, and I could just download. And I had so much I wanted to say in the book. My fear was that it would become very repetitive and unstructured. So the commissioning editor, Sarah, who was amazing, asked me to write a pretty detailed synopsis. And I hate doing things like that. I'm one of those people that goes, it will go where it goes. It will happen when it happens. Stuff will come, it'll get downloads, it'll get on the page. She was like, okay, yeah, but like, no, I can't sell it. I can't get people to say yes to this if we don't actually have some sense of what you're going to write. So I wrote a really relatively detailed synopsis. She then looked at it, and I'd done it in categories of partner, self, partner, friends, parents, work colleagues, universe. She looked at that and said, actually, I love it, but I think what you need to do is turn it into theme. So that was her chapters came from her, and she was absolutely right. So the other thing is, because I'm a worker bee, because I've been a journalist, I'm not a prima donna, just because, my word isn't the word. Just because I think it, just because I said it should be structured this way doesn't mean to say I'm right. So I'm very available for people to come and say, well, actually, why don't we try it this way? Or have you thought about doing it that way? Because I think there's something very juicy in that collaboration. So just because I think it should have X doesn't necessarily mean it should. And when she suggested it to me, it was very clear to me that she was onto something, and that was how it worked. So actually, it's in themes, and what I felt was to take people through the beginning. So I think the beginning is empathy. How the basic structures of better relationships.
Oh, well, we start chapter 1 is active listening. Yeah, then it's empathy. But it's interesting that you muddled that up, because when you look at the list of chapters on Amazon, it's in a different order than the actual book. And so that was actually going to be my question. I was like, oh, I'm sensing that the chapter order changed.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I haven't even really checked that out. Yeah. Yes, I think I probably started with empathy, and then it got changed around to active listening. So for me, it starts with the, in inverted commas, easy ones. It starts with the ones we can all understand, and then it builds. So by chapter 7,
get it.
You don't have to work through the whole book, but ideally, to me, it has it builds on each other. So you kind of get through chapter 1 and think, right, I can do empathy. I'm all good to go. Sorry, active listening. Chapter 2, I can do empathy. Chapter 3, change the narrative.
Change the narrative.
And to be rigorous about where you put your energies. And that by that point, hopefully, we've built the whole way through the arc. The book also has practical tips and practices. It has a quiz at the end of the chapter, because everyone loves a quiz. And really importantly, and I added this at the end, right before I was about to go to press, I decided that what wasn't there was actions. What actions are you going to take? Because we can talk about this, but if we don't do anything, nothing changes. And I went back and I added 3 key actions for people to take.
I love that. So that was literally just before going to press. This is such a beautiful window into the process, Lucy. So let me go back. When you originally sent your pitch to the commissioning editor at Quadrille, it sounds like you didn't at that point have a synopsis. Was it just a sort of an idea at that point?
Yeah. Yes, it was an idea. And she had read a lot of my articles, and so she knew who I was. So that's helpful. It's quite difficult, I think, to start a pitch from being completely unknown. I think it's very hard to get people to trust in you if you unless you have a brilliant idea. So Catherine, for example, had never written anything. And then she wrote Calling in the One, which is an actual massive bestseller. It's a New York Times bestseller. And it's about calling in your beloved, really. I mean, and it's genuine anything. And I think they did a lot of work on it. But someone read it and thought, hang on, there's something in this, And that's how she started writing. But she was a therapist. She's a, trained therapist, and was practicing therapist in America. So it didn't come from nowhere, but she didn't have any writing background.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I do think that credibility really makes a difference, because, and this was something else I wanted to get your thoughts on, Lucy, because there are so many people who've had experiences in their life. Like, let's say I've had experiences in my life where I'm looking at the relationship I have with my mother. I'm looking at the relationship I have with my work colleagues. I'm looking at the relationship that I have with the universe. And I think, oh, this is all very fascinating. I really want to write about it. But I think someone who's putting that pitch to a commissioning editor who also has a therapy background, like some kind of technical background, so it's not just going to be your own personal experience, I think that makes a real difference.
Yeah, I think that made a massive difference. Because the other thing to ask yourself, there's no judgment in this, is why do I want to write this? Because some people say, well, because I've had a really interesting life. And I'm not dissing anybody, but we've all had interesting lives. Loads of people got lots of, it's sort of, I mean, I can't tell you the extraordinary things people tell me in the therapy room. I mean, people have had very extraordinary lives. Really, really bizarre things happen to people. You hear it and you're like, wow, how on earth did that happen? So a lot of us have that. So the problem with that is, why does anyone want to write a book? For me, writing this book, it had to be because it was about offering something helpful to a lot of people. The training as a therapist really was incredibly key to that, because there's a lot of other people's stuff in there, which obviously I reference. It's not my stuff. It's stuff I've learned from other people that I use in my own life that I found very helpful. And so I'm offering it up to other people because therapy is very expensive. It's very time consuming. That people can take a book like this and think, well, okay, well, I can do this and I can do that. And this really helps. So I think that, always ask yourself, why do I want to do this? And who is this for? Who is this book for? If you want to write a memoir for you or your kids or your family, that's fine. But you need to ask yourself the question of who is this for? And there's many ways of writing. So very few, I mean, lots of books get published, but not so many as used to get published because everything is online. You can do a Substack. You can write in many places. You don't necessarily have to get your audience to writing the book.
And did you know that you wanted to put this content into a book as opposed to create an online course, for example, or some
online course? Yeah, I mean, I think on the back of the book, I would like to create an online course because lots and lots and lots of the practical stuff didn't go in the book. No, there were so many times I thought I really want to add that, but it was X amount of words, and they didn't really want all the practical stuff. There's so much practical stuff. So I thought, well, if I was standing on a stage or in a classroom and I was teaching this, what would I be doing? How would I be helping these steps? Just teaching people about active listening takes about an hour. It's not that interesting to read about, to be perfectly honest. You kind of need to see it. You need to see what active listening is. And it's a game changer for relationships, actually. It really is a game changer.
That's making me think of the Imago process, which I do want to ask you about. But just coming back to the process, because you've got the quiz, you've got the action steps that you added in, but you've also got case studies as well. So I'm curious, how did you go through that process of distilling? Because let's say there's people watching this, maybe they've got case studies, maybe they've got research that they want to use to back up their own personal experience. So how did you go into the process of distilling all of these incredible stories and these struggles into some kind of cohesive structure for the book?
I think I've just got that kind of brain. I don't overthink. I'm not a perfectionist. I'm not a procrastinator. I'm really decisive. I'm a really decisive person. So if someone says, when I wanted to move home, I literally looked at about 2 houses and went, well, it's house A. And people are like, well, what about house B, C, D? I'm not interested in house B, C, D. It's house A and I'm moving into house A and that's the end of it. So I'm quite good at making decisions. And then I'm quite good about not doubting the decision that I've made. So that was put my therapy hat on. A lot of people actually do not trust their own capacity to make decisions. That may be in the head, that's in the book somewhere. Trusting your own capacity to make a decision. Because we have a narrative around stuff like I make bad decisions or everything I do goes wrong. And so when you come to write a book, a lot of people can't get past the first line. They can't get past the first chapter because they're constantly writing or telling themselves it's not very good. And then they've got this wealth of material and they don't know how to sift through it and work out which bit should go where. A lot of writing is getting rid of what you've written, which is depressing because you've written a beautiful 1,000 words and then you have to look at it and go, it's a beautiful 1,000 words, but it doesn't fit. It's taking up space. It doesn't fit. And then I have a kind of whole document full of words that didn't make it. So I just put all those words there, because one day those words might come up again. So I'm like, I'll put all the words that didn't make it into the place of wonderful words that didn't make it file. So they don't get lost, but they're just going to sit there until I might need them one day. And then I was very clear with each case study. What was the point of the case study? What was I trying to achieve with that case? What was it representing? What was it shedding light on? So I chose them very carefully. Also different age ranges, different sexualities.
Okay.
Because there's no point in everyone being...
That's interesting. So what's the point? What's it contributing? But also going back to this idea of the decision making, it sounds like you were quickly making that decision. The example you gave with your house, it's like, I don't need to look at others just in case. I can just go with that first decision and trust it.
Yes, absolutely. Building up trust in yourself and your capacity to do what you're doing, which is also what we're doing in therapy, which is where we're helping people grow the capacity to be a hopefully well-rounded individual who's happier on the planet. With couples, I describe it as being like on a learner bike, and I'm like, at some point we've got to take one of those little stabilizers off. Couples come and they want me to be their stabilizer, and they say, we can't do this without you. We don't, when you're not in the room, we don't get on. I'm like, well, great, but I'm not moving in. I don't live with you guys. So I'm here to, I'm going to give you the stabilizers, and then we're going to take them off a little bit. You've got to go a bit further and a bit further. And so one day you're going to go off, hopefully into a beautiful future together, and you won't need me anymore. You can always come back. But, I don't hold them with, especially in couples, I don't really personally hold with people having couples in therapy for years and years and years. I don't. I think couples need to go be a couple. That's what I think.
And actually, in a way, this book gives me a sense of that as well, because it's got a lovely conversational style and a sense already with the exercises, with the quiz, it's really empowering you to do the work. And if you think about chapter 5, you're responsible for your relationship. So it's really sort of sending that message of like, well, here's the information, but you've actually got to really interact with the information and do the work.
Yeah, and it's a very difficult thing to say to people. I have, and I'm very happy to say, a checkered love life. Okay, but the common denominator in my checkered love life is me. It's not all those men I've loved and lost, or loved and left, or they've left me, or whatever. I'm the common denominator around that, actually. And so at some point, it's like you need to kind of wake up and say, what part in this am I playing? If I want to change it, if you don't want to change it, fine, but then you might want to read the book. I mean, if this is about change. So if you don't want to change stuff, fine. People come in and say, is it okay to do X, Y, Z? I'm like, well, I'm not the moral majority. You can do whatever you want to do, but are you okay with that? That's really the question you're asking yourself. And so, a lot of people come in and say, my relationships are terrible, and my partner and I row all the time, and we don't get on, and my kids hate me, and da, 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 da. And the common denominator in that is you. So it's like, which part of this, even if it's very tiny, are you prepared to take responsibility for? For example, women often, but it is women more than men come in and say, oh, my husband or partner doesn't do anything, or my children don't do anything. And I do this and I do that, and I pick up the towels, and I say, well, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And they say, oh, it's because what? Because I don't like the towels on the floor. And I say, okay, Karen, you don't, but your kids probably don't care. They don't care if the towels on the floor. Now, it's a different thing saying they should care about you, and you care. But teenage boys do not care that there are wet towels on the floor of their bathroom. So it's sort of, what I'm offering people is stop doing the same stuff you've always been doing, because there'll be no different outcome. Put a carrot cake in the oven, it comes out of carrot cake. It doesn't come out of chocolate cake, however much you might like it to. You've got to change the ingredients of your cake. And that means taking a great big deep breath and taking responsibility. So either you say, yes, I'm a mad OCD control freak and I'm just going to pick up the towels. Or you say to people that, listen, I know you don't care about the towels, but I do. Because it makes me feel unsafe. It makes me feel insecure. I mean, there's feelings behind everything we do. It's not really about the towels. Or it's about, I like to have a clean house. Or my mother always said, you know, if I left the towels on the floor, I was a lazy cow, whatever. But the interesting thing about this is when you tell people this, they do get it. They do get it. Hopefully they get it.
And that's the key, isn't it? Like, as I was listening to you, Lucy, I thought, okay, there's a difference between secretly stewing about the towels being left versus sitting the family down and opening up a discussion and letting them know this is on my mind. And I'm curious because you talk about active listening in the book. You're talking about empathy. I haven't got to a place where I've seen you mention the Imago technique, but I really wanted, when I saw that on your website, I thought I really want to talk to Lucy about this because I've heard about it, I've read about it, but I've not had an opportunity to talk to somebody about it. So first of all, you may have to explain what it is for people who are watching who've never heard of it. But what I'd love to know is I'd love to hear about your experience yourself of using it, because that's what I've always wanted to ask somebody about. Using it yourself in your relationships, and how do you make it happen? So first of all, if you can please just explain what the technique is so that people watching who don't know.
Imago is a couple system. There's a lot of information on it online because it's such a big, huge topic that it's going to be hard to make it all. But essentially, so please look it up in case I get this, you know, you want to know more. Harville Hendricks and Helena Kelly Hahn did a book called Getting the Love You Want. That is the basics of Imago therapy. And Imago is the image, it's the image of each other. Imago actually is also a chrysalis, and I kept thinking it was that, but apparently it's not. The Imago is the image of the other. Getting the Love You Want is how it started. And in that book by Harville and Helen is the Imago therapy and all the exercises. Now, when I first got that book, I looked at it and thought, oh, there's no way I can do this. It's exercise heavy. So the couple needs to do a lot of work. So the idea behind Imago, which I think is right, someone described, so let's say you meet someone. We've all done this. I hope we've all done this. You walk into a party and you look across the room and you just want to go and talk to that person, or you want that person to come and talk to you. You just do. And people say to me, I met, you know, Samantha, and I knew that she was the one for me. Now, of course, that is complete and utter nonsense. You can't possibly know that someone you have never spoken to is the one for you. You don't know anything about them. It's nonsense. So it's a great feeling, and lots of people have had it. You can have it with friends. You can have it with houses, actually. You can really have it with pets. It's a feeling, this is the thing for me. But in terms of people, someone described it very, very accurately as a collision of wounds. So I put that one in your pipe. A collision of wounds. So I think something happens energetically whereby you are highly attracted to this person. They are highly attracted to you. Something passes that's hard to put into words. Some form of attraction or some knowledge. With friendship, it's quite often like, you look like you're part of my tribe. You know, you look like the Lucy tribe. I just get a feeling from you that you're part of the Lucy tribe. It happens all the time. So then, and the Imago premises, you know, that these two, so, you know, you've probably got similar wounds. I don't mean like, oh, my dad left when I was 2, my dad left when I was 2. It's the feelings behind it that are really there. And then the dream is, the unconscious or conscious dream is, this person is going to heal me. Because when I'm with him, I'm happy, I am alive. When I met my now ex-husband, I'm not going to go to, but I felt that I had met the person I've been waiting for all my life. And it's not in a way that words can describe. It was like he got some very tender parts of me, very young parts of me that really no one else got, because I care as this happy together. And I am that person, of course I am, but I'm also, you know, quite an abandoned little child on some level that I haven't really done enough work on. And that's kind of quite addictive. because you want to feel that way. It's a wonderful feeling. Oh my goodness. And then you go into the crazy limerick stage of, we're going to be so happy. We're going to be together. Everything's going to be wonderful. And then what happens is at some point, the other person, your prince, your maiden, doesn't do what you thought they were going to do. You know, they're misattuned, or they don't get you, or whatever. So instead of being healed and happy and harmonious, you're not. You're now back into a place of feeling unheard, unmet, and then it's their fault, and then you get vicious, or then you withdraw. You go back into whatever you did when you were a child, you know, back to the same behaviors, and nothing's changing. And then you split up and you go and do the same thing with somebody else, essentially. And no one likes to hear that. But Imago is shining a massive, great big spotlight on that. And what it's really, the beginnings of it is appreciation. So what I appreciate about you, so we're starting energetically high. People forget they like each other. So I'll say to clients, what do you appreciate about your partner? And they'll go, and then sometimes they will start, well, actually, you know, I really appreciate how kind she is. The other person reflects it back because it's active listening. And it gets very emotional. They remember how much what they fell in love with. You have to move into active listening as a way to be able to work through very, very difficult topics. So one person listens and the other person talks in short bits. So this person can repeat it back. And when I say repeat it back, I mean pretty much directly. So I've had people that take up the fact that in the morning you make me a cup of tea and the person said, "Why hear you say, do you think I'm a brilliant person on the planet? Because I care about you." That isn't actually what the person has said. So what we're getting people to do is to listen. It's not about the repeating, it's about the quality of the listening.
Yeah.
And then we're doing
because there's a step. Sorry to interrupt, Lucy, but there's a step just there that I remember that I thought, oh, that's so powerful, where with the Imago sort of dialoguing, you reflect back what the person said, but then you say something like, have I got it?
You say, did I get it? You don't say, did I get it right? No, because it's judgment. Say, did I get it? And the person,
did I get it? And I love that.
Did I get it? And if they didn't, you resend. You say, well, honey, I think you missed a little bit. I'd love to resend that. I train people to do this, obviously. It's not easy. You resend. Oh, I think you missed it. Yeah. I'm going to resend it to you. So you're already calming down everybody. This person's listening, and this person's talking from the I. What I feel is the story I tell myself. You know, what I believe. So you're not saying, but you do this and you do that. So you're really calming down the defensiveness. Then you say, did I get it? And then you say, is there more? And is there more? See, I'm interested in you. I want to hear more about you because I love you and I care about you. You're important to me. Then we do a summary for the listener. What I've heard you say is, when we go see my mother, you know, and then you say, it makes sense to me then, given the fact you feel so unhurt by my mother, it makes sense to me that you become grumpy. Yeah, I get it. You don't have to agree with it, but the validation is it makes sense to me. To each of us, our actions make sense. So it's sense when it makes sense to me that makes you hurt. So we're validating. You don't have to say I agree with you. You'll just listen. And then we do the bit of empathy, which is, I imagine that must make you feel lost. I imagine that must make you feel sad. I imagine that must make you feel angry. Is that how it makes you feel? And this person will go, yeah. Or they'll go, no, actually it makes me feel this. Then you swap it around. It takes hours, literally hours. Then you swap it around.
It's so thorough though, and I'm curious, Lucy, because obviously in the book you've got the active listening section, you've got the empathy section, you've got the change the narrative section. So I imagine if you're having a conversation with someone, sort of switching up what you're telling each other and what you're telling yourself. But I'm curious, when you practice this with couples, the moment in the dialoguing where you're reflecting back And then you're saying, is there more? I'm curious, how edgy do people find that? Because often in a conversation, the person's just waiting to have their say. So to have to keep saying to the other person, is there more that you want to tell me, versus butting in and having their say? I'm wondering, do people find that challenging, or is it suddenly a bit of an eye opener to be like, oh my God, when I'm not waiting to have my say, I'm actually enjoying the conversation in a very different way?
I think it's both. It's a practice. Imago therapy is a practice of art. Good relationships is about practice. It's a whole new way of being. When you first start doing it, I think it's difficult. We're not used to relating like that. And then we start shifting our energy into a place of, actually, I am really interested in what you're saying. I do really want to hear you. Because the quality, because you have to practice this outside of the room. I say to people, this is hard work. Imago therapy isn't for the faint-hearted, but you will have an amazing relationship if you go through it. You'll have an amazing relationship. When you laugh, because there's lots of other things on top of that. It's based on the Imago dialogue. And you're facing each other rather than the traditional way of counseling therapy, which is you're looking at your therapist. You're facing each other, you're talking to each other. And I'm here facilitating and directing and guiding gently and helping people each other. Once you've got used to it, it's amazing, because you can talk about anything, really. Because you're talking about the feelings underneath it all.
Yeah. And I love that you said it's a practice, because I think one of the things that struck me about your book, and has struck me in lots of situations, let's take it in the context of your book. We want a better relationship. So whether that's a better relationship with ourselves, whether that's a better relationship with our partner. But as you say in the book, we don't know how. And so there comes that word practice, this strange place that we find ourselves in, because we've had an education up until our 20s, but the education hasn't involved how to have a relationship with yourself, how to have relationship with others. So we're in this strange place of having to practice something that perhaps the inner critic thinks that we should be perfect at, or we should be able to do already. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about how someone can allow themselves to practice something that they believe they should already be able to do. They sort of should have come out of the womb being able to do.
Yeah, I think that gets into the sense of self. I mean, I don't have that. Like I've said, I'm not a perfectionist. So we're all kind of made differently. And there would be a huge dialogue around where perfection comes from. I just want to say to people, there's no such thing as perfect, and it's a totally pointless exercise, because you will never get there. The one thing you need to know is you will never get there. You will be endlessly, it's like, Sisyphus, you're just carting the boulder up and it comes down again. So what a huge, massive relief to know that you'll never be perfect. Oh, hooray! So you don't have to worry about that. I mean, I think in terms of why would we know this coming out of the room? How do we know about relationships? How do we know about who we are? We only really know about who we are through other people when we're really little. We know who we are through our beautiful relationship with the nearest and dearest of us. Our sense of self. But our sense of self is utterly connected to our sense of our mother when we're babies. This is attachment theory. Am I safe, secure, wanted, loved? Are my needs met? When I cry, am I picked up? When I saw the nappy, is my nappy changed? Do people around me smile at me? Do people around me engage with me? I mean, that's how you get a securely attached person. So you get a securely attached baby. But there's, a lot of people don't really get that. So from the get-go, they're struggling to form these very natural relationships because maybe they're not experiencing one. And then you start the hell of growing up and going to school and having and not having friends. And a lot of people feel, I should know how to do this. But we don't. I mean, how does anyone know how to be a mother? You think you're going to be a mother and you're going to have a baby, and somehow, from I don't know where, it's all going to be downloaded because why wouldn't you know how to breastfeed? But you don't. You don't know how to breastfeed. You don't know how to change a nappy. The whole thing's exhausting and very frightening. So we have to be fine with being a learner. And I think that's a lovely thing, to be open to stuff, saying, well, I don't really know how to do this, but you do, or you look like you've got this covered. So could you let me, tell me how you do it? And there is no shame in that. It's a beautiful place to be. To say, can you share this with me?
Yeah. It's so simple what you said. We have to be fine with being a learner. Like, really almost elevate that status, because I think if we want to get it right first time, that was very much my pattern.
Right.
I wanted to be right. I wanted to be right first time because I wanted to meet with the expectations of others.
Yeah.
Or I wanted to be a quick learner. But since I've allowed myself to learn slowly, to learn sloppily, there's just been so much greater sense of satisfaction and calm that's come in. I'm a hell of a lot more relaxed. That's for sure.
Imagine how hard you must have pushed yourself. People get very stuck on being right or wrong. And there is, again, I'm like, relationships are, well, I'm right. I'm like, but why is that important to you to be right? Because by being right, you're making her or him wrong. And is that what you want to do? Or would you just like to that's a lot more connected? There isn't really a right or a wrong. It's just a your way and this way. That's all you're really talking about. And it's keeping you into disconnection, because amazing relationships are about connection. And we've all, so I try every day. I try to be as open-hearted as I can be. Not so open-hearted that I take everyone else's barbs and brickbats. I'm not really open for that. So I'm careful with my boundaries. But if I smile at people, I talk to people, I compliment people, I'll take an extra 5 minutes to talk to that old person who hasn't talked to someone all day. I'll say to that scary-looking teenager, I really like your hair, or I think that person is really cool. Or, there's a guy the other day with music blaring out of his beatbox and everyone was looking really frightened. And I just went out and started dancing because it was super funky. And he was laughing his head off, because most people want connection. They do. They want people to connect with them. They're lonely and they're lost and they're sad and they're angry. Most people are good people. Most people don't want to, stab you and attack you and harangue you. So, that's what I'm suggesting to people. It's not just about your lover or your children it's about the whole set of humanity in front of you, which is, how do you want to be in that world? Do you want to try and connect with people, or do you want to be in fear? Or you'll get it wrong. What if I say that and it's the wrong thing to say? Well, I don't know. Say it and see. Take a deep breath. Say it and say, you look great.
I think the right and wrong is really key. And it's making me think of that sweet couple in your chapter 1 who was so bent on trying to make the other person wrong. And I love the way you say it. You can either have the right and wrong battle, or you can just have that connection. That's a really nice way of saying it. Lucy, that time has absolutely whizzed past. I definitely want to make sure that I let you go for your therapy clients, but I'd love to just take a final moment just to pause and reflect, because it might be that in the conversation today and talking what you've talked about, you might have thought, there's something that she didn't ask me. I wish she'd asked me this, or I wish I'd had an opportunity to say that. So is there anything else that wants to speak through you, or anything else that you want to add?
I think, what do I want to add? I mean, I hope that people read the book and get a lot out of it. I am open. I'm an open book. I'm open for any communication about it. I really am. And I really want people to find it empowering, so that they, I went through a very, very difficult time. I've written about it. A lot of people know. I got divorced. I lost my family home, not because I got divorced, but because I'd made a very seriously, ridiculously bad investment. I lost all my life savings, and then out of the blue, my beloved sister died at 59, completely out of the blue. 7 children. I mean, it was. I had to move home. It was horrific. There was a moment when I was sitting by the river and thinking, I don't think I can survive this. I don't know what else I can say about that. I wasn't going to kill myself. I was just absolutely at rock bottom. And I think at that moment, my phone pinged, and it was a friend of mine saying, my Irish friend Maggie, I was thinking of you. I was just thinking of you. You're okay. I'm actually in the car on my way to you. And it was kind of like, I mean, it's just burst into tears. I feel like crying now. It's burst into tears. And I realized that it was my relationships with people that was going to get me through it. And that meant telling people what was going on. And that meant being vulnerable. And that meant trusting. And that meant just finding things I could do every day to move me forwards. Just tiny things that I could achieve every day. And I think that's really where the book comes from. That, actually, sometimes you've got to open up and you need to be vulnerable and you need to accept help. And just you do your next steps. The book is filled with what's your next step, even if it's tiny thing. I'm just going to wake up and listen to 5 minutes of Deepak Chopra or something, because I love Deepak Chopra. And gradually my energy came back, but I'm not the same person as I was back then. And that's fine. That's good. That person couldn't have written this book. I wouldn't have had the wherewithal to write the book. So I also want to let people know that, investing in your relationships is life affirming. It's what will help you be happy here on the planet, but also really going into yourself and thinking, what is it that I really want to do? And if you want to write the book, write the book. Write it for you. If you've got something to stay it. Find a part, there are platforms all over the place now. Just do what you're doing, do beautiful podcasts with people, get the word out to people. It's building a different community. And we've all got to come together like little iron filings and magnets. So it's got to be bigger than the individual. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for helping people understand the passion and deep feeling behind why relationships are so important. I think that story that you shared is such a great example that they literally are the things that get us through.
Yeah.
As you were sharing that story, it was making me think of the way wounded cats isolate themselves to die. And I feel like it's the same with people. If we isolate ourselves in our greatest time of hurt, we're going down that instinct, versus if you allow yourself to remain in connection, you just give yourself a greater chance at a deep, thrilling life.
Yeah. And, I was in such shame, not about my sister, but about many things. There's a whole lot of shame in these things. And shame is not our friend. Shame is not, and when we feel shame, I felt I'd let a lot of people. I felt I'd let a lot of people down, and I had let a lot of people down. I had, and I felt deeply ashamed, and I wanted to hide away. I'd gambled away £23,000. I'll talk about that another time. But can we believe it? I had to sell my children. We've got no money. I mean, even saying it now makes you actually have a panic attack. Luckily, I have one.
Oh, Lucy.
No, I mean, it was shocking. But in a way, I was going along like an ostrich with my head in the sand, taking no responsibility, going on. It was irresponsible because banging on, but I had this whole thing about freedom and responsibility, and I just go where the wind blows. And if I want to have another child, I have another child. Irresponsibility felt like a boring, dull thing to do. But no, I now have spreadsheets. I don't have a spreadsheet because actually I had to grow up. But it took a lot of brickbats. It took a lot of the universe going, what are you doing? What are you doing for me to manage to do this? But genuinely, if it hadn't have been for my friends and my family and actually my children and nature and my dog, very keen on dogs, because dogs love you even though you're ashamed. If it hadn't been for them and telling them, I see your shame and we're, but we're here. And you can shame. It's okay. You don't have to hide your face and be the cat that crawls off and dies in the wood. It's okay. We're not, we're all right. You've done some stupid things, but we're all here. One of my brothers was like, You know, you've got to say a house, you don't have much money, but I do, and I'm your brother, and I will, you know, I want you to know I will help you so that you don't go into panic. So I can pay your bills while you get yourself back together. It was that. Maybe people might be able to have that, but the fact that people are there saying, I can have you, I can cook you some food, I can take your children to school. That's why you need these amazing relationships. And also the universe does wonderful things like spring. You know, like spring, I remember lying there thinking, that's actually incredible. I mean, the universe is constantly doing a dance of beauty and joy, and we're all, you know, who don't even notice it. You know, this happen all around us all the time. So at the end of the book, really, it is a call to noticing what is around you, rather than just blithely carrying on, because we're all very busy all the time. You stop and appreciate. And I'm kind of ranting on now, but
no, but that's a lovely, I'm really glad that you mentioned that last one, like noticing the surrounds, because I think when we've got that gaze inward and we're focusing on the worries, we've got nowhere to go with that. But like you say, the universe has often got something, a leaf unfurling or a little seed husk that's dancing in the breeze, that in that moment, if you allow yourself to see it, you're like, okay, there is magic here.
Yeah.
Life can be beautiful.
I remember lying in the garden crying, and then a little butterfly kind of landed on my hand, and I was like, that is the most beautiful thing I've really seen in ages. Yeah, and I thought that's quite remarkable, and it kind of it could shift me out of where I was, just noticing a husk flying past, thinking, well, that's propagating the planet. I mean, it's fascinating, and it does it all the time. It's constantly showing off, and we're not afraid of it. Then wow, that's amazing. So that's really where the book, I think, came from.
Yeah. Lucy, thank you. I'm really glad that we got that final insight in. It's been such a treat talking to you. I could certainly go for the same amount of time again. Perhaps you might be open for a round 2 at some point. I wanted to talk to you all about the calling in the one work as well. So we might save that. Yeah, we'll save that for round 2 then, because I think that would be super interesting to find out more about. But yeah, just congratulations with the book. Wishing you all the best with it. I'm here to support you, and we will pop links below. You said that you're happy to hear from people. What platform would be the best one to reach out to you on?
I think I'm Lucy.Cavendish for
Instagram.
Or there's a very long holding page title where you can just download my free videos actually about the book and extra bits on top. And that's, sorry, it's so long, www.lucycavendishextraordinaryrelationships.com.
Perfect. We'll put all of the links below, but we'll put the holding page, we'll put your Instagram, we'll put your therapy website as well.
Therapy websites, tell me what you think, ask me a question. I'm going to go on a tour. I'll tell you about that in the next one. If you want me to come to your town and
exciting,
I'm going to come and talk to people, because that's how you change things. You can't sit in your house. You've got to get out.
Yeah. Beautiful. Keep me posted. Lucy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy and a pleasure.